This week on the OneCast, we are joined by Eric Schwind, who works for Mossy Oak Properties, and he's also an avid catfish angler.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the OneCast. A little bit different. If you're watching the YouTube version, Trey's over here staring at me, but a little different look in studio because Pete is gone right now. Him and his wife are actually taking a wedding anniversary trip down to Lake Murray to go marshal the Bassmaster Elites that is happening. It's going to be happening this weekend. So it will be good to have him back here next week. We can dig into his experience, find out who the good and bad ones are, because hopefully he gets paired up with some good anglers.
So I got some inside juice. So by the time you guys are listening to this, you already know who it was. But just got a text from Pete a little bit ago, and we're going to jump into the partnerships here in a minute. Pete is being paired with Bob Downey. Bob Downey has been on the Elite Series for quite some time. He's originally from Wisconsin. He's a fantastic angler, and he's a good human being. So Pete's looking forward to that. But guess who Chelsea got paired with?
Maddie?
Nope, she got paired with John Cruz.
Oh,
which is really cool.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Pete earlier about it, and Chelsea's had a heck of a year, man. She's fishing her first year in the CCKF series, so she's already fished 2 derbies this year. She got selected for that first form drawing with the National Professional Fishing League.
Went and did that.
Yep, did that with Skeeter Crosby. Caught some spotted bass on Lake Hartwell. Was it Lake Hartwell? Yeah, it was Lake Hartwell. And then she got selected to be with her longtime hero on the Bassmaster Elite Series, John Cruz. So it's been a really cool year for her. I'm super happy. And, what a cool anniversary deal. You know what I mean? Just going to Marshall for the Bassmaster Elite Series.
I mean, I agree. But you got to have a wife and a husband that both love fishing.
Yeah, if I asked my wife that, she would smack me across the face and say, just get out of my house. So she'd be like, actually, what is the Bassmaster Elite Series? I have no idea. But anyways, hey, folks, listen, we got Ben right here. He is the owner of OneCast Fishing. You guys need to head on over to his website at onecastfishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast. He's got all of the line of soft plastics, the snagless jigs. If you want to join the snagless revolution, you can get your hand on the bladed ones, the swim jigs, the flipping jigs, the punching jigs, the swim. I mean, all of them, right? He's also got all of his weedless Ned heads. So you got multiple different weights on that weedless with the weedless Ned head. Where'd that little Ned rig bait go? I had one in my hand. It pairs really well with the OneCast fishing weedless Ned.
It's under your mic there.
Yeah, it's under the mic. It's a great bed fishing tool. That's why I had it in here, because we talked about it on Fishing Friday Live. So head on over there. Also, the OneCast merchandise is also on his website too. So if you click on the OneCast, you'll see our hats and shirts on there. So show us some love as we continue to bring you guys awesome guests and awesome information. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, make sure you use that code, TheOneCast.
That's right.
And I was going to say, I appreciate that, Trey. Tonight, if you're watching, I am wearing the Carolina Waters UPF shirt. Dug it out. It's been a little bit since I wore it, but it's actually one of my favorite fishing shirts here. UPF 50. They have great performance wear, great hats, great hoodies, great gloves. And it has the I'm drawing a blank here. They're supposed to release. Pete's always talking about.
Oh, the gloves.
Gloves. Have they come out?
Yeah, the gloves, they have came out. I don't know what's on the website right now. I do know that I have a pretty large order in for pickup. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on some of the buffs, some of the gloves, some of the new shirts that they came out with. I know Seth Ellis is he recently joined the Carolina Waters team as well. And he's been rocking their merchandise on the MPFL trail. So like Ben said, that UPF 50 gear, man, you can't take too many precautions when it comes to protecting your skin from those harmful UV rays. And speaking of that, go to Hobie Eyewear, hobieeyewear.com. We are going to have a link in the description. Copy and paste that link into the internet box. I don't know what that's called. Into the internet box. Hobie Eyewear offers a plethora of different options, from their floating frames to their casual lifestyle, all sorts of different options for you and your family. My daughter owns them. She uses them for softball. We all rock them. The floating series, I promise you, lives up to its name. I've literally dropped my sunglasses during a Lake Gaston tournament, had to put the boat in reverse and grab those right out of the water. They're a great investment. They're already priced very well. But if you use that link, you're going to save 15% and probably get yourself a pair of sunglasses that you ain't going to find the price on that anywhere else. I think it's like 83, 85 bucks for a pair of like the floating frame series. So they also got prescription sunglasses too. So if you need that, they can get you hooked up. So check out hobieeyewear.com. And you know what? Last but not least, and we always talk about it, we got our good buddy here, Eric Schwind. Eric has been a supporter of the show for quite some time, and he's sitting right here with his giant arms next to the in the camera screen. But you know what, Eric? I'm going to let you introduce you as the partner and where people can find you, because we're going to talk about catfishing.
Yep.
So not so much the property side of it, but, you know, just kind of introduce the Mossy Oak property brand and where you serve the North Carolina area.
Yeah, man. So I'm Eric Schwind with Mossy Oak Properties, Land and Farms Realty. Easy to find. I service the Fort Bragg area and surrounding areas, basically anywhere south of Raleigh, all the way down to South Carolina border. I've been all the way out to the Charlotte. So I cover a wide variety of area, but we also have a lot of partners that work inside of Mossy Oak Properties that if you're in a different part of the state and you need help over there, I can refer you to a good agent over there. I've been with Mossy Oak Properties for about a year now. Specialty is land and farms, rural houses, still work on residential because I'm in a military area. So yeah, man, you can find me on Facebook at Mossy Oak Properties of the Sandhills, Eric Schwind, Mossy Oak Properties of the Sandhills. I'm on Instagram and just my personal page also. Yeah. Feel free to reach out, man.
What about your phone number and your email?
Yeah. So email is eschwind, that's ESCHWIND at mossyoakproperties.com. My phone number is 936-494-9686.
I know I got that memorized.
I'm glad you got it memorized.
You know, when we first started, marketing and stuff for you, it was like, shoot them an email at eschwind at mossyoakproperties.com. And I was like, we're going to have to spell that one out. You got to spell it out. But man, we appreciate you breaking that down. The market's been crazy. The economy continues to be crazy. And, you don't just service the Sandhills area. You really service anybody, even if it's just referring them to another broker. Right. Yeah. So, if you folks are in the market, like, listen, everyone is trying to get away from the concrete jungle. Mossy Oak Properties has a wide variety of opportunities, different types of paradise that you guys can own. And I'm sure Eric and his team will steer you guys in the right direction. So appreciate you breaking that down. If you guys don't DM him or text him, you can shoot us a DM or any sort of message like that, an email, whatever, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction. So appreciate you breaking that down. But tonight we're going to talk something a little bit different, which is a little, I wouldn't say it's non-traditional for us. Like, we've had a wide variety of guests on the show. We've had biologists, we've had vendors, we've had professional anglers, amateur anglers in the bass fishing world. We've had a country musician who is now a kayak bass fisherman. He does both, Abby Abadanza. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and check that out. That was a really cool one, and his BOS win on Logan Martin. But we're gonna go into the catfishing world, which, listen, tuck your feelings away a little bit, because Eric might say some things about bass themselves that enables him to catch giant flathead and blues and channels and whatever other species of catfish there are. So I'm going to open it up with this, man. We always ask people, like, what got you into the outdoors? Was it from childhood, or was it something else along the way? And then what drew you specifically to chasing those Whisker biscuits around?
Yeah. So I guess like most of us, I started fishing when I was really young. Growing up in Texas, outside of Lake Conroe, which is a giant lake in Texas, known for bass fishing, crappie fishing, catfish, whole 9 yards. But I just remember, waking up early mornings and going to run trot lines with my dad. And we take a little John boat out with a little 25 horse on it or something. We went out the night before and set the trot lines and let them soak for about 10 to 12 hours, go out there. And, we'd pull up 15, 20, 30 pound catfish. And at the time, I didn't really think nothing of it. That was our way of getting food for the house. So I grew up doing that. And then, I did a lot of bass fishing growing up too, and like private ponds, private lakes, stuff like that, which kind of spoiled me because it was easy. I just take a worm out there, throw a worm out there, and I'd catch a bass almost every other cast.
in Texas.
In Texas.
We're not doing that in North
Yeah,
Carolina.
he ain't doing that in North Carolina. From there, you know, with my grandparents too, probably every weekend we lived right down the road in the same neighborhood, and we had access to a part of Lake Conroe right there. So they had a little spot we go to, and we crappie fish all the time and go get some live minnows, go out there, and we just have a blast catching fish all day. So that's really what started, you know, my passion for fishing. The outdoors as a whole came later on, the hunting aspect of it. I grew up around hunting family. My granddad hunted and stuff like that, but I never really got into it. It was mainly fishing growing up. What led me to catfishing specifically was just being a kid, you know, 10, 11, 12 years old. I go down to the creek and I had a hole down there, and I just take some chicken livers and, you know, spinning rod or something, some light duty fishing tackle, go down there and just have fun catching little catfish on chicken livers. And then fast forward, you know, probably to 2017, after I've been in the military for a long time, I was kind of got away from the fishing and the hunting and the whole outdoors, everything, because being active duty, we're always busy. And a lot of people tend to not have time to go out there and do those activities that they enjoy. But I linked up with a group called the Fallen Outdoors, was a nonprofit organization that takes veterans hunting and fishing. And through them, I was able to meet a couple of people that were in the catfishing world. And my buddy of mine, Garrett, me and him went out catfishing one time, and you know, we hooked into probably a couple 25, 30 pound fish. And from there, I was hooked on the catfishing side. You know, I went from not owning a boat, not having any catfish tackle, whole 9 yards. And next thing you know, I'm buying a boat, I'm buying fishing rods, buying tackle, and I'm fishing tournaments. And, you know, we're going to get into the tournament catfishing thing eventually. But very first experience with catfishing in a tournament was not that great.
Yeah.
It was actually right down the road in Avens Ferry here on the Cape Ferry. I had a boat break down. I had to paddle it all the way back like 5 miles, catfishing all night in a 24-hour catfish tournament.
Yep.
Just catching a whole bunch of dinks all night and not really knowing what I was doing or getting myself into.
Yeah.
So that's where it all started, man.
Man, I'll tell you what, you know, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the active duty side, Ben. I'm sure you saw this too. You know, serving in the military, it takes a very large percentage of your time away, and some of that time away means time away from your roots. You know, you hear it a lot with folks that are in the Army or any of the branch of service. Man, I used to fish.
Yep.
You know, 10, 15 years ago, but I haven't
all the time.
Or I used to be avid bow hunter or whatever, right? You name insert it, right? Like, so the military, I mean, and rightfully so, we were engaged for a long time, post 9/11, to where the only thing on our mind was what the nation needed. So it's good to hear that, you know. Do you know what the triggering mechanism was though, to get you? I mean, it was just going and fishing with your buddy, right?
Well, getting back into outdoors really. So when I first got to Fort Bragg, which was in 2007, I've been here ever since. There's a lake down there on Butner Road near the park that's actually, I didn't know at the time, it's a youth fishing only.
Yeah, 12 and under.
And I wasn't paying no attention.
I didn't realize it was youth only.
Yeah.
So I went down there and you know, I had all my appropriate fishing license and permit to fish on post and everything. And I went down there with some light tackle and just started casting off the dock, not really paying attention. And I hooked into something that broke my line. And I was like, all right, this is what I used to do.
Yeah.
This is what I love doing.
Yeah.
Let's get back into it.
That's right.
And from there it grew.
No cops came.
No, I didn't get I was fishing by some kids. So, you know, maybe that was okay.
Well, I mean, I will tell you this. If you're on the, you know, Eric, I appreciate you referring to it as Fort Bragg. We all know it's changed now.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It'll always be Fort Bragg to us. But if you're at Fort Liberty, if you're one of those newer soldiers listening to the show, it is absolutely a youth fishing lake. I don't know how much fishing you can do in it anymore, because the last time I passed it, it was filled.
It's grown up
with vegetation. I mean, there's still water in there and stuff. So
was that one of the ones that got drained after the hurricane?
It's highly possible it is, but I know that it used to be filled with a bunch of fish. I probably didn't fish it, but I was close to it. And you know, that it's just one of those deals, but you know, that tug on the line, that serenity, that being in the outdoors, like that peace of mind that it brings you, I feel like is what, part of the reason why it trapped me back. Cause I was much the same. I don't know if you were, Ben, but it was like joined the Army in 06. And then from like 06 to really until I got here, and there's a difference in our career fields, Eric's and my career field, but I will tell you that it was much needed to get back into the outdoor world,
100%.
right? And we see that a lot. We always talk about it on the show with Take a Warrior Fishing, FX3 Inc., Heroes Harvest, insert the nonprofit name, the Fallen Outdoors. I mean, they're all over the place, and the goal of those institutions is to get veterans back or into the outdoors for therapy and stuff like that. So that's great that tug on the line, even though it broke off, it was like, yep.
It was heartbreaking.
Oh yeah. And it ain't the first and it ain't the last time it'll ever happen either. So, but yeah, man, I appreciate you breaking that down. Ben, do you got any questions before we move in? So catfishing, right? So let's talk about, before we get into the tournament side. So you did the right thing. You bought a boat. It wasn't a brand new boat.
No.
It was a used boat.
It was a used boat.
And so for any of you all listening or watching, it was the exact same thing I did. It was like
You've been out on that boat.
I have been out on that boat, and I remember putting in at that really dumpster fire of a ramp, and only a catfishing angler would put in there.
Yep.
No, I'm just kidding. But like there's so many lessons learned when getting into the outdoors. I mean, it's not as easy as it is as easy as just grabbing a rod and reel from like Walmart or whatever and going out there. But you kind of jumped a little bit more into it, bought a boat. And did all these things, but you learned how to manage those struggles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm curious with, because my catfishing experience, mostly growing up, we go sit on the bank. We used to like catching live bluegill and brim because the flatheads prefer the live bait.
Yes, they do.
Same with the trout lines. And I was actually disappointed when I moved here, because I guess in North Carolina you can't run them; they have to be parallel to the bank. And they can't be perpendicular going out into the lake.
Yeah, I feel like there's a rude thing to do anyways.
I mean,
I
like going, so I don't think I've ever ran one here, but mostly it was blind luck, okay, this spot looks fishy. Let's just set up here and all. And so, obviously with the bass game, there's so many nuances to it. So I'm interested to kind of hear some of that about the catfishing side as well.
So talk about that. Like, first, let's break the tackle part of it down. Like, what does somebody need? What would you recommend for a beginner getting into just catfishing?
Yeah. So, I mean, for a beginner, there's no need to go out and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on catfishing tackle.
Right.
You can go down to Walmart, probably spend $100 on one of the catfish Walmart series. Was it Ugly Stick?
Yeah.
I think Ugly Stick makes a catfish rod at Walmart.
Yep.
You can grab that. You can grab some 5/0, 6/0 hooks.
Circle hooks, Kell hooks. I don't prefer J hooks because you have to set the hook with those. Yep.
Circle hooks preferred because they set themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to miss a lot of catfish if you're using a J hook or even a Kell hook, which is like a combination of a circle and a J. But yeah, I mean, you can go down and spend anywhere from $50 to $100 and get enough tackle to go down to your local lake and catch some good eating channel cats.
Yeah.
Bait wise, you're looking at chicken livers, maybe some of the stink bait that they sell. I don't like touching it. That's hard to get off your hands after you touch that stink bait. Better use some gloves or something. But
there is something I did see this trick years ago, and the few times I've used stink bait, I've used it because you know how that stuff just dissolves.
Yeah.
If you take pantyhose, you go buy you go to Walmart, buy like $1 thing of pantyhose, and you just use that and wrap it in that and stick that in the hook.
Same thing with chicken livers.
Yeah.
If you're going to use chicken livers, because if anybody's got any experience putting a chicken liver on a hook, it comes right off if you cast it too hard. Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's slinging off. So yeah, they have different, I guess, apparatuses or lures, if you will. You can fill them with stink bait. Chicken livers, really pantyhose is about the best way to go to put them on and make them stay. But yeah, I mean,
so your wife's going to get real mad when she finds out that her pantyhose are going missing, and then you come back and you're like, try to give her a hug, and
it's all over your hands.
Oh, that's nasty.
Not a good day.
What are you using like for a beginner? Like, what would you recommend their line be? Fluoro, mono, braid?
So it really all depends.
For a beginner, though.
For a beginner, probably some mono.
Mono.
You can even use the mono that comes on pre-spooled on the line.
Okay.
That's going to be fine. 10, 15 pounds is about all you're going to need. You can really land probably 30, 40 pound fish on 10 to 15 pound mono. If you know what you're doing, you got a decent leader tied on too.
Yep.
You know, using the drag, you got to work the drag.
Right.
Right. You got to really finesse the fish in. If you're the lighter poundage that you're using on your line, the more drag you want them, or the less drag you want on it. Yeah, don't have it tightened down.
Right. You break
So if they
the
go
line.
to make it run, they're going to break the line. You
Yeah.
know, same thing I'd imagine with bass fishing.
100%.
Mhm.
Right. But real basic, some 5/0 hooks, some 10, 15 pound line on the reel and the rod,
Some pantyhose.
some pantyhose, some chicken livers, some stink bait, even some of that. What are they? The little nuggets that they sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that fake shad or the shad that they got in a bag at Walmart, I wouldn't buy that. Don't
Yeah.
waste your money on that. You're better off with chicken livers,
Yeah.
chicken hearts. And you can go down to your local lake and just cast it out there with the, you know, with the weight on the end of it and wait for it to hook on the line, set the hook, reel it in, you're good to go.
So depending on what
You know?
age you are, you may or may not need a fishing license. Just throwing that out there, right? Get your fishing license if
Under
you're over.
16,
yeah,
yeah,
if
you need
you-
a fishing license.
You need your fishing license, and don't fish that lake on Fort Liberty like we were talking about unless you
Yeah, don't do that.
are younger. So no, that's awesome, man. You know, I think a lot of people like, you know, getting into the outdoors can be extremely overwhelming for people, right?
It
Because
can be, yeah.
they don't know where to look. I mean, now there's access to YouTube and all that stuff.
Yep.
And, you know, the information environment saturated with education, but still people like to hear it from, you know, firsthand experience. So listen to Eric's guidance when it comes to like just jumping into it. Right.
And
Like,
that's, you know, that's what I recommend. If you're interested in it, just go try it out.
Yep.
Don't go spend a whole bunch of money on it. Just go try it out. Go buy you a cheap rod from Walmart. That's all you really need. It's going to land it most of any fish that you're going to find there in a lake. And try it out, see if you like it. And if you like it, then, you know, do some more research and start upgrading from there.
before we jump into the tournament side and the boat setup and things like that, what are some of the accessories that you recommend? Like somebody who's going to just fish off the bank outside of the pole and the reel and the line and the bait and stuff like that. Thinking like pliers or grips or gloves.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely have some pliers. Depending on what kind of hooks you use. If you're not using a circle hook, there's a tendency for the catfish to swallow the hook, or, you know, get it down there in their gill plate. So you need some pliers to get it out. I would say definitely use some gloves. Be cautious of the spine on their back, because that thing will poke you and it's going to hurt and it's going to sting. Probably a bell. Put a little bell, clip a bell to the end of your rod so you can hear, because if you ain't used to fishing on the bottom,
Yeah.
you can hear the bell go off. That's going to let you know you got a bite. If you're fishing at dark, put a little glow stick on the end of your light or on the end of your rod. That's probably about it. I mean, it's real simple. I mean,
Yeah.
all you really need is some chicken livers, a rod, and a place to fish, and a fishing license.
Yeah.
Definitely have a fishing license.
Yeah.
And a stringer if you want to keep them, or a cooler.
Yeah.
You know,
They're good eating when they're smaller.
they're good eating when they're smaller. And,
Yeah.
you know, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But
Yeah.
anything under 10 pounds is good eating.
Yeah. Before we take a break here in a second, and the folks didn't need to know that. I don't know why I said that, but we're going to take a break in a second, but you're not going to know it. If you're fishing at night, which there are bass fishing tournaments for our bass guys and gals on here, but I highly recommend always having a headlamp with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than forgetting your headlamp or having dead batteries, and then you're trying to fumble around with a cell phone light or something like that. You need two free hands, especially when it comes to those slippery catfish. And trust me, you talked about getting spined, and my worst spine injury from a catfish came from about a 6-inch. I don't know if it was a channel or a flathead, and my son hooked it right here in the back creek, and he was using one of those little ugly stick spinning rods, ultralights from Walmart, and he flipped it up, and when he did, it literally just swung right into my leg, and that catfish knew exactly what he did.
Yeah.
He went straight out,
There we go.
and that thing would not stop bleeding. So yeah, man, like getting stung by a catfish is definitely no fun, but
Mm-mm.
you know, you broke down the beginner stuff. There's probably some things we're forgetting, but hey, like we said, shoot us a DM or whatever the case may be. Let's transition into tournament talk, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Because I think it's a whole different game than what we're used to. Because we were talking before or earlier on the episode, you're talking about a 24-hour tournament, so overnight. So that's it's a little different.
Yeah, for sure.
A little
Yeah.
different game.
So we're talking equipment. Let's talk equipment, and then let's go into like breaking down the water itself, and then like kind of the rules for most normal catfishing stuff. So when it comes to the rig for catfishing, you know, in the bass fishing world, everyone's like got to have power poles, got to have spot lock trolling motor, got to have forward facing sonar. You don't have to have any of that, by the way.
Nope.
But it's, you know, we're we're comfort creatures and things like that, and we get influenced by good marketing campaigns, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In the catfishing world, it's no different.
No
right?
different.
It's no different. So talk about your setup, your boat setup that you use for catfishing.
Yeah, so like I said before, the first boat I bought was a 17.5 foot Sea Arc. Had a 60 horse 7 root on it. Didn't have any live wells or nothing like that. So at the time, you know, after I put my rod holders on the back, you got a rod rack, probably 8 to 10 rod holders on the back. And then I had to get a toolbox, large toolbox, one that goes in the bed of your truck. And that's what I use as a live well, because all these tournaments that we fish are CPR. They catch and release it, and your fish has to swim away alive. So that was rough for the first couple of years. And then here, probably 4 years ago now, I upgraded. I sold that boat and I upgraded to a Excel Cat Pro 21 foot Cat Pro. It has a built-in 80-gallon live well in the back. I got rod holders on the back. I got 8 rod holders on the back with 2 out the side, or actually 4 out the side, and then a cutting board. I run a Minn coated Tarova, spot lock, iPilot, whole 9 yards, because different tournaments call for different types of fishing.
Right.
So yeah, I got a Humminbird on there, Helix 9 or something. Real basic. It's got side imaging and all that good stuff, and that's really all you need when it comes to catfishing. However, like you're talking about forward facing sonar, power poles, whole 9 yards. I mean, all of that has bled over.
Sure.
Probably one of the major differences between a bass boat and a catfish boat, besides the rod holders, is I've got lights all around that thing.
Yeah.
I've got, you know, probably 18, 24-inch light bar in the front with 2 12 inches on the side of that to light up the banks. And then I got 2 spotlights in the back to light up the back when I'm casting at night, because a lot of our tournaments are at night.
Yeah.
I've got an external 30-gallon bait tank that I use to keep live brim and shad, or, you know, whatever I'm fishing within.
Yeah.
Occasionally bass.
Okay.
Occasionally bass, as long as they meet the crewel limits and they're caught legally by whatever the regulation says.
Yep.
Then a large net.
Yeah.
Got to have a net, you know.
Yep.
I run an oxygen box inside of my live well, so that feeds oxygen to the fish. Change out the water regularly because they got to have fresh water to stay alive, especially during the summertime. That's really it, man.
Yeah. So
besides the rods and the reels and the tackle, you know,
yeah,
boat setup, that's it.
I mean, it is. Oh, go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
Oh, net's the one that a lot of us guys, I use net all the time, but I guess you can't really boat flip a 30-pound catfish.
No, you're not. You ain't gonna have a whole lot of luck with that.
Yeah, I mean, like the boat setup. I mean, you just talked about the electronics. You talked about the mechanics of the boat. I mean, you're talking anywhere's upwards of 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 grand.
I don't like to think about that sometimes.
But it's exactly what it is, right? I mean, like it's no different really with most of our styles. And that in you know, Eric is breaking down like a tournament rigged.
Yeah, this is a tournament ready. Let's go.
Tournament ready. Let's go. Why so many lights though? Like, what are the lights for? Does it attract the catfish?
No, definitely not. So the lights on the boat are so I can see at night.
Okay.
All right. So you get out there fishing on the river in the middle of the night. I fish a lot of rivers. I don't do a whole lot of lake fishing. All right. So in a river that has current in it, you have obstacles in that river. Whether it's a log floating down the river, it's trees, it's stumps, something sticking out of the water. The last thing you want to do is hit one of them running 40 miles an hour down the water.
Oh, I agree.
So, you know, obviously the lights don't do no good if it's foggy out, but
you got
to take it slow. But yeah, that's what the lights are for. So I can see where I'm going. The lights out the side so I can see the banks, because when I'm looking for a place to fish, I'm looking at the banks. See what kind of structure is above the water. It gives me an indication of what's below the water, along with the sonar and, you know, the fish finder and everything.
So what are you looking for?
Yeah, break that down.
So it depends. Depends on the body of water you're on, but let's use the Cape Fear River right down the road here as an example. If I'm night fishing, one thing that I'm going to look for is cover. All right. Catfish love cover, whether it's, it's usually submerged cover, obviously. Going to be some logs in the water. It could be a hump. It could be a pile of rocks. Or I'm going to look for a place where bait fish tend to hang out. Because one misconception about catfish, everybody thinks catfish are bottom feeders and they only eat the scraps on the bottom of the water. Well, that's not true. Majority of the time we're using live bait. If I'm going after a flathead, you're looking for log jams, place where a bunch of logs are piled up, due to rain, stuff washing down the river. It gets piled up in a river bend, preferably outside of a river bend in a deeper hole. Sometimes you want to be in the shallows. It really just depends. I mean, think of all the terrain features that you look for bass fishing and where bass are going to hold up in the water is essentially there's probably going to be a catfish somewhere near around there.
Oh, most of the time. They're all predator
right?
fish. Yeah.
Now sometimes you want to look for open water because I don't want to find a fish that's stuck to cover. I want to find a fish that's traveling the banks or your natural travel corridors underwater. So that could be, a ledge, fishing on a ledge where that's just a natural travel corridor for a fish, whether it's a catfish, a bait fish, doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm just looking for a place to intercept them.
Yeah.
What about, because I assume, catfish, I assume they change their migration patterns seasonally, just like pretty much every other species. Of course, in our world, like it's very important, like all the migration patterns and all. So I'm curious, like break down like catfish movement seasonally, and I don't know, do you guys run tournaments 12 months a year? Do you have a year round?
Yep.
So let's talk about going from like the winter time through spring and summer and all the way back around.
All right, so we'll start with winter time. During the winter time, your flatheads you're really not going to target because most of them go and hibernate during the winter. The water gets cold, they're not active. They go pile up somewhere, they find a spot and they just stay there. They're not real active, they're not out actively feeding. Blue catfish, on the other hand, while they're a little bit lethargic, they're still out actively feeding. Okay. So your deeper holes where the water's a little warmer down below, those are good target areas. And then heavy structure underneath water are good target areas during the winter. As you come into springtime.
Well, let me ask you a question though, real quick. In the wintertime, does your technique of fishing them, like, are you using dead bait or are you still using live bait?
No, that's good. Great question. During the wintertime, it's mainly cut bait. Mainly cut bait. And when I say cut bait, I'm generally using shad. Cut shad. I go down and catch it wherever it may be, find it schooled up somewhere. And that's what we're going to use to target blue catfish is normally what you target during the wintertime. You won't hear me talk a lot about channel catfish just because they're generally smaller fish.
Yep.
Not a fish you really want to target if you're trying to win a tournament.
Sure.
So cut bait during the winter. As the water starts warming up during the spring, which we kind of just passed right now. We're kind of easing into summer.
Yep.
You're going to start finding that those flatheads are becoming more active. So around like April time frame when the water's warming up, kind of transition, use a mix of cut bait and live bait, whether that's bluegill, brim, sunfish, any kind of panfish, crappie, bass, you name it, we'll throw it.
Mm-hmm. Other catfish.
So you were talking about your son catching a fish out here in a creek behind the house. That was most likely a bullhead.
Oh, okay.
So bullhead, they're a smaller breed of catfish. They're actually great live bait.
Really?
They're super hardy. They stay alive. You can throw them until they get eaten.
Yeah.
Basically, you can't kill them almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, other catfish, you could also cut up a smaller catfish and throw them out there. Or if you catch a small, probably less than a foot, less than 12 inches or something, you can throw that out there too if you wanted to.
It's like the ones you catch in Jordan.
Is that against like the catfishing?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so they're cut and throw, baby.
Now we do try to stay away from the blue cats and the flatheads.
Yeah.
If we catch them small, you won't let them back so you can grow those trophy catfish.
Gotcha.
So springtime, those fish are becoming more active. The water's heating up. They're going to be more active. We do a lot of let me go back to the winter real quick. During the wintertime, you don't fish a lot at night. Most of your fishing is going to be during the day. A majority of the wintertime tournaments or fishing events is all going to be during the day. It's warmer.
Yeah.
And two, your fish are going to be more active throughout the day as that sunlight's in the water, kind of warming stuff up.
Right.
Now, right now we're in a weird time because we're in May and we're going into spawning season. And
For
this
catfish.
is for catfish.
Okay.
And this is where catfish and bass kind of defer a little bit when it comes to fishing for them. During the spawning season, these larger fish are in holes and building nests. So they're a lot harder to target and they're a lot harder to catch. You're going to catch a lot of smaller catfish during this time. So really probably about Memorial weekend to 4th of July weekend is really kind of a dead time to catfish.
Okay.
How deep do they like to make those nests in those holes?
It depends. And a lot of times they'll use existing cover. If anybody ever watches anything about noodling,
Yeah.
which you won't catch me putting my hand in a hole at all.
It'll be all
but-
right, man.
Yeah.
Hope I
I'm out with 2 fingers instead of 5. But yeah, it really just depends on the body of water. Now they're going to try to get deeper and they want to get away from predators because the female will go in there and lay the eggs. The male is going to stay on the nest and protect them until they hatch. That's why after spawning, you'll see a lot of fish that are scarred up, beat up. Their tails are beat up, their heads are scarred up, and they've been fighting down there, guarding off predators. So summertime catfishing after the spawn's pretty good. A lot of night fishing for obvious. It's hot. I don't want to be out there when it's 110 degrees and the sun's beating down on you. Now it can be done. They're just harder to target, and it's going to change your pattern of how you're trying to find the fish. As we go into fall, now these fish are starting to feed up real heavy. Fall catfishing is real good. Still at nighttime. Still same kind of structure, same kind of pathways that you're trying to find these fish on, and you're generally going to have pretty good success. Really, fall time, wintertime, springtime, really great fishing. Summertime is pretty good after the spawn because once they come off the spawn, they're hungry. And then you just go right back in the winter and the cycle continues. But a lot of that really, really depends on the body of water that you're fishing.
Right. So, let's rewind a little bit about breaking the body of water down. And you don't have to go into it too far, but when I think the greatest piece of technology that was ever created, and a lot of people will agree with this, is how advanced our map cards have gotten, right? With the lakes, the contour lines, the artificial reefs they mark, you name it. Like, it's really hard to keep a secret. However, in a lot of the river systems, there are no map cards that define all the contour lines, or there's a lot of rivers where I don't have defined contour lines. So I was going to ask you, are map cards really important for you even before you get to that body of water?
So me personally, I don't use map cards. I use Navionics. All right. But also when it comes back to map cards and Navionics, unless that body, a river, which is normally what I fish, they don't map out rivers. All right. Yep. Unless they're a navigable waterway, like the James River in Virginia. That one is mapped out. But one thing to remember is that water is constantly moving. There's always different flow of current through there.
Yep.
Everything is changing. So that's why, like the Cape Fear River, you're not going to find it on a map card. You're not going to find it on Navionics. Now you go to a lake, they got map cards. Yep. They're all over Navionics. You go to the James River, where it's a navigable waterway, or the Mississippi River, they have barges running up and down all the time. They have to have those mapped out.
Yep. That's true. Yeah. So would you say that obviously visual observation of the bank line and the water itself is probably the most important part for like that, and side scan imaging?
So, to give you an example, if I go fish any stretch of the Neuse River, the Cape Fear River, and maybe even the Roanoke, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my phone, the Google Maps. I'm going to start with that satellite imagery. And what I'm going to look for is bends in the river. All right. That's the first thing I'm going to look for. I'm going to mark those. And then if I can zoom in and I can see a structure pile there, I'm going to mark those. Now, when I get on the water, I'm going to go to where I'm marked. But while I'm there, I'm going to run my side scan. I'm going to see what's on the banks. I'm going to see what's underneath, and I'm going to just find structure. A lot of these rivers, you'll find the banks are real steep, and then they're generally the same all the way across the bottom. But, looking for rock piles, brush piles underwater, mussel pile, like mussel clams,
like
Shell bed.
Yeah,
shell beds.
Yep.
Shell beds is huge. That is a huge portion of the diet of these catfish.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
and that's what I'm using that without having avionics or something that already hasn't mapped out where I can see ledges or underwater humps or islands or holes. That's where we start.
Ben talked about the migration patterns earlier, but just out of curiosity, and for those listening, like, do catfish follow the migration patterns of other fish, of bass, of brim, of shad? Do they follow them, or do they just hang out in their normal areas and do whatever they need to do?
They're during the wintertime, they're going to find the deeper holes.
Yep.
But they're also going to find the bait fish. They're going to find what they're eating. They're going to follow those because those are the fish they're eating. That is their main source of food. So if you know what the bait fish are doing, you can generally get a good idea of what the catfish are going to do.
Yeah, like in bass fishing, we always talk about the shad spawn, right? Which is like the first spawn for us. Like, we follow our shad spawn.
Yeah.
And then after that, the bass typically spawn. A lot of times the bass and the shad are spawning at the same time.
Yep.
Usually your later waves of bass are still spawning. And then you have the brim, the bluegill spawn that happens in that. But right after the spawn for bass, they get in a funky mood, right? And they're the same as catfish. They get beat up. You can tell their tails are all sheared off. They got scars. Look like they all grew arms and beat the crap out of each other. But our catfish, is there a certain water temperature that is like, what triggers the catfish spawn? Like, for bass fishing, the example is when the water temperature reaches like that high 50s, low 60s, then they start moving up. They make their beds, and then the females move up. They drop their eggs. It's a certain incubation period. Was it 3 days incubation period or something?
It depends on the water.
Or it depends on the water temperature, right? But our catfish the same way.
Same exact way. And there's a different water temperature for each species of catfish. Generally, your flatheads are going to start spawning, and then you're going to have your channel cats, and then your blue cats.
Okay.
And it all goes off of water temperature. I can't give you exact temperature right off the top of my head, but high 50s, low 60s, in that range, that's really when they're going to get heavy into spawn.
Yep. Does the full moon play a role in catfish spawn?
I haven't kept track of the moon phases enough to really give you a good answer on that one.
I mean,
all that plays into it. Barometric pressure,
Yep.
Weather systems pushing in, fronts pushing out, the moon phase, the whole 9 yards, every bit of that plays into catfishing just the same as it does any other type of
That's
fishing.
right. Yep. Yeah, I think there's a huge misconception there's not a misconception, because you can usually just go throw some live bait in a lake and catch a catfish. But we're talking, so we talked about the seasonal patterns and stuff, but there's something about tournament catfishing, right? So now you've broken, so you're at the river, that you're going into a tournament. What does a catfishing tournament consist of? Like, what are the rules and regulations? How long are they typically? What is your fish limit and all that?
Yeah. So, great question, man. And I hate to say that it depends, but it depends.
Yeah.
Because by state varies. All right?
Okay.
North Carolina doesn't have a size limit on catfish that you can bring to the scales, or an over limit or an under limit.
Right.
So the state depends, but I'll give you an example. If I fish one of the local tournaments out here on the Cape Fear River, generally speaking, our bag limit is 3 catfish.
Okay.
It could be any species. All right. They have to be alive whenever you weigh them. They have to swim away within 5 to 10 minutes after you release them back into the water. You're going to have a polygraph test. And then you just have generally anywhere from 8 to 15 hours is one of the tournaments over here, especially the overnight tournament. They'll start around 5 or 6 p.m. You can blast off lines in the water at 6. You're going to fish till 8 or 9 in the morning and come back to the scales. By then, you got to be back on time to the scales, get your fish weighed in, and
that's it.
There, yeah.
3 heaviest fish.
It goes off 3 heaviest fish.
Yep.
So, and then they'll have a big fish pot. So whoever's got the biggest fish, and then occasionally we do trash fish. Trash fish being,
anything other than catfish?
No, gar and
That's a trash.
bowfin. Yeah, that's what it is.
Mudfish.
Yeah.
So bass isn't a trash fish.
No, bass is still a game fish, buddy. Still a game fish and a trash fish.
You know, it's funny because, you know, Eric was talking about like, yeah, usually in the summer we like to fish at night. Usually in the winter we like to fish during the day.
Yep.
Is it fair to say catfishermen are fair weather guys?
Absolutely not. Man. You can catch me on the James River when it's, 15 degrees out.
If it's raining,
It doesn't
if it's
matter.
sleeting, if it's
It doesn't
snowing, it
matter.
doesn't matter. No, I'm just poking the bear here.
And a lot of these tournament rigs, you start spending some money on a boat, you'll have a bimini top, you get a full enclosure on the boat. So I mean,
You get a houseboat out there, basically.
basically, you can be out there in any weather, it doesn't matter.
So bougie.
Yes, very bougie.
Oh my goodness. Where do you go? So okay, so you're fishing a catfishing tournament,
Mm-hmm.
based on the state, right? So you need to check your state regulations,
100%.
and obviously you need to follow the tournament bylaws.
Yep.
Probably have to wear a life preserver when the big motor's in gear.
So
I mean,
that's,
state law, probably.
that's going to be
law.
on state law. And again, depending on one of your fish, generally, we err on the side of caution. There has been a lot of boating accidents with catfishermen, especially guys like to fish below dams, to go catch bait or something like that. And you never know when that dam's going to turn on.
Yeah.
So rule of thumb is if that dam's pushing a lot of water, you need to have a life preserver on.
Sure.
And I recommend having one at all times.
At all times, yeah.
Because you just never know. You could be cruising down the river at 35, 45, 50 miles an hour and you hit a submerged log. Next thing you know, you're ejected from the boat.
That's right.
Yeah. So safety is a big thing.
We do say, we joke and we crack up. We like to have a good time and stuff like that. But, a couple weeks ago, we did lose somebody. And I say we as the human race, like we lost, an angler and I think the partner got ejected out of the boat here on Sharon Harris, right? They ran into a concrete pillar that holds the power lines that crosses the northeastern part of the lake. And it was unfortunate, one didn't make it. And so, Eric brings up a good point. Like we always talk about it, wear your PFDs. If you're going to wear your PFD, make sure you have that kill switch connected, right? Because 100%. You don't want a runaway boat. You're fishing moving water a lot of times. So that's consistently dangerous. And Ben even brought up another good point. Follow the state law. Don't put yourself in position. So when it comes to the tournaments, with the bait choice, is that usually regulated, or is it like go catch your own bait, bring your cut bait? How is that?
Yeah, so I'll just I'll use one of the larger tournaments I fish, and that's going to be up there on the James River in Virginia. It's a yearly tournament. It's a 2-day tournament. It's called Kings of the James. For that one, and for any other tournament, you have to prepare. We don't just bring plastics out there and rig up our stuff on the water. I have to go catch my bait. Yeah. So, that's one thing about catfishing is it could take
you got to catch fish to catch fish.
I got to catch fish to catch fish.
I like it.
But you do that before the tournament.
Before the tournament, generally. Okay. All right. I've got a tournament coming up in 2 weeks on the 19th. We're doing a veterans tournament and I'm using my boat to take a vet out.
There you go.
So I'm going to go up there on a Friday. And I'm going to survey the water, do a little bit of pre-fishing, not much, but I'm going to catch all the bait I need. And up there in Virginia, I can use a gill net. I got a 100-foot gill net that I go into a creek. I set out to catch my shad. I might go there and try to catch some white perch or something like that to keep them alive and keep some live shad. Not up there.
No, I'm just kidding.
Not up there. Not on that body of water. I haven't found bass to be real productive. Bass are really good for flatheads down here.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure they're actually legal to use up there in Virginia, to be honest with you. But I focus on.
Yes. Some states have regulations on game fish. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And so up there, I like to use shad. And rule of thumb is use the bait that's in the water.
Yep.
All right. So if I'm going up there and I know that they have a heavy shad population, I'm going to go there and catch my shad. I'm going to catch the shad prior to the tournament. I'm going to show up tournament day. We'll do our sign in. We'll have a captain's meeting. We'll have a blast off, and you go fish for the day.
Yeah,
and be safe, especially up there. It's navigable waters. There's barges everywhere up there.
Yeah.
Is it when you go out there for 8, 12, 15 hours? Is it rod and reel only? Or are you setting so no limb line?
100% rod and reel only. I do not fish any tournament that's not rod and reel. That's a personal choice. There are other methods that are legal, using, limb lines and such, but these tournaments are rod and reel only, catch and release.
Right.
100%.
With the, we've had biologists on here a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
and, North Carolina waters are dealing with the invasive spotted bass population, Alabama spotted bass, and in fact, blue cats are technically an invasive species to North
So they
Carolina.
say.
So are flatheads.
So are flatheads,
So they say.
but they coexist well in our waterways. Just a question for you about catching bait. I'm I don't know the law on it, but if you catch bait out of a certain body of water, you only use that bait in that body of water, right?
Again, that goes back to your state regulations.
regulation.
And it also varies by body of water.
Yep.
There are some bodies of water that you cannot bring some sort of bait fish to and use.
Yep.
Generally speaking, though, I want to catch bait out of that body of water that I'm going to fish.
That's right.
Because if that bait's in that water, those fish are eating that bait.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if I bring, say, a skipjack herring from, the Mississippi River or Tennessee River or something down here and fish with it on the Cape Fear, they're gonna be like, what is this? I ain't never seen one of these before.
Yeah, not to mention that, like, we talked about in numerous episodes about bacteria and
Mhm.
parasites and things like that can enter our water systems, which is why we're dealing with a lot of what we deal with. So we just need to be cautious on those types of things. And
Yep.
and anglers are anglers across the board, and we're probably some of the best conservationists that exist in the outdoor industry, to include the guys that hunt and stuff
Yep.
like that. So it's important for everybody to understand, like, check your state regulations. I know we said it numerous times, but the last thing we want to do is introduce an invasive species of bacteria, whatever the case may be, into our water system. So, we talked about the boat. We talked about breaking down the water, the seasonal migration patterns, things like that. You guys fish for big money too, right?
Yeah.
Like it's good
Yeah.
money.
There's some tournaments that are offering $50,000-$100,000 pots.
Yep. I'm going to ask about fish care. I think it's important, right? Like, you guys are weighing in live catfish.
Yep.
We talk about it with bass all the time. There are certain instances where you actually need to fizz the fish because it gets barrel trauma and it starts to bloat. We put G juice and different additives into the water. We make sure our live wells are clean. How does fish care? I know catfish are a lot more hardy than a bass is. But you talked about it in the summertime, fish care,
Mhm.
and in any of the seasons. But is there something specific you guys do to keep your catfish 100%?
So, I mean, me specifically, I keep it simple. You on some guys' boats, you'll find oxygen tanks, you'll find G juice. Some guys get kind of crazy with it. All the recirculating pumps and all that. The most important thing is keeping fresh water in there. So during the summertime, when the water temperature is higher, I've got this oxygen box that constantly pumps water, but it's recirculating the water that's already in the box. So I also have, my the filler, the inlet line to refill it with fresh water. So I'll run that and put fresh water on them for a while. And then occasionally, if it's really hot, I got bags of ice or extra ice in my ice chest, I'll throw some ice in there to kind of cool that water down.
Okay.
To me, that's the most important thing, is just running a good aerator inside of there. As long as you have that and you're keeping fresh water in there, maybe every 45 minutes to an hour, you got something that is providing them oxygen, you're good to go. Now, you don't have to go as far as having an oxygen tank rigged up, but some guys do. We was in one tournament, we fished the Mississippi River monsters, back in, I think it was 2019. It was right after we came back from that deployment. We used, it was actually an aerator for a pond. It was rather large, ran off a 12-volt system, had to hook a power inverter up. But when the lady came by and was testing everybody's water, she said we had one of the best oxygenated waters that there was, and it's simple, real simple. Just running air into it, and it creates that natural oxygen in the water.
Yeah, it creates those bubbles, and
just keeping water circulation, keeping oxygen in it, and changing out, keeping fresh water. If it's super hot, throw some ice in there.
Yeah.
Now you can throw G juice and all the other stuff in there. I prefer not to. But yeah, that's it. You just keep clean filters. Clean your filters out every once in a while.
Yeah. I got two more questions. I'll turn it over to Ben. Well, the last question I have might be a closing question, but What is the funniest? So do catfish regurgitate things in the
Oh
live well?
man. Yeah, they do. Because, just like any fish, when they're in that live well, they get stressed out when you're running around the water.
Yep.
They're bouncing around, all that good stuff. They've regurgitated clams down there on the James River, crabs, other shad, other fish they ate. And you make sure you clean your live well out, because good night. That stuff is not smell good a couple days later.
Yeah. It's always funny too, because then, you look in your live well, if you're fishing for weight, 5 fish bass limit, 3 fish catfish limit, you're like, man, you just choked up like 10 ounces worth of food.
100%. Yeah.
You're like, dang.
They are never as heavy coming out as they were going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something we talked about years ago. I remember you and I talking about this, and for those watching, listening, Eric and I first met in an undisclosed country together. So It was a really good time. We didn't even like each other at first, so that was funny. I didn't even like Pete when I first met him either. But you grow to learn people, and you develop relationships. So, but years ago we talked about, and we see it a lot in the bass fishing world, how to properly pick up a big fish, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So from the big giant catfish perspective, what are some of the ways that you've seen people pick them up that is not the most preferred method that potentially injures the fish? And then what would you say the right way to do it is, or the best way is?
Yeah, so number one not preferred method is going to be picking them up by their gill plates, putting your hands into their gill plates and damaging their gill plates. That's how they breathe, right? The other thing is, any fish over probably 15, 20 pounds, a lot of guys will pick them up by their jaw. Well, when a fish is in water, they don't know how heavy they are. They don't have that gravity to pull them down. So really you can dislocate their jaws and harm that fish picking them up by their jaws. The proper way to grab, a decent sized catfish is you're going to put your hand in its mouth, all right, with gloves on. I suggest with gloves on, because they don't have teeth, but they got a sandpaper tooth patch that will tear your hands up.
Yep.
Because they don't stay still when you pick them up.
Yeah.
But you grab them by the mouth and you pick them up out of the live well and support their belly. Where you're supporting the weight of the fish with their belly. It doesn't mess with their stomach or any internal organs that are going to cause that fish to swim away and die later.
Right.
So just pick it up and basically bear hug it, put one arm underneath it, one hand in its mouth, and hold it.
Hold it horizontally.
Hold it horizontally.
Not vertically. We hold bass up like this all the time. And their jaws are a little bit different than a catfish, right? So that's also a part of, conserving the resources that we have here. I mean, a catfish goes out there with a broken jaw, they're not able to eat, they die.
Yeah. They're
right.
Or they just be deformed for a while.
Have you ever caught any really deformed looking catfish?
Man, I've caught some ugly catfish, brother.
Is there such thing as the non-ugly catfish?
I guess bottom lip sticks way further out than the underbite.
Oh, that poor cat.
Man, I'm telling you, that fish, he's seen better days. Yeah, I've caught some ugly ones. My favorite catfish is probably a flathead.
Yeah,
the pattern on them,
they're cool.
Pretty, man.
It is.
They are very pretty fish, and I do all I can to help take care of them fish.
That's
man.
right.
Like you were talking earlier, invasive species, and to some, yes, but at this point, they've been in the waterways for long enough to where they become a part of that ecosystem. They're a vital part of the ecosystem.
100%. If they're not there, then enough bait fish aren't getting eaten. You know what I mean?
And then those bait fish start overpopulating. Your bass population goes down. Your crappie population goes down, and it has a huge effect.
Yeah.
So
it's like a circle of life, not like a triangle. But
who would know? Who would have
thought? My final question let me turn it over to Ben. Ben, what you got?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One is what's the biggest catfish you've caught, and if it wasn't during the tournament, what's your biggest?
72 pounds.
So it was not during the tournament, unfortunately.
That's everyone.
Yeah. That's just the way it goes, man. I go there and tournament fish, and I
caught my PB.
Trying to break a 50 is hard, but the largest catfish I ever caught was a couple of summers ago. And it was a blue catfish out of the James River. It weighed 75 pounds. All right.
Okay, I was close. I said 72.
You were close, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one, dude.
He's huge.
That's more than my 12-year-old son weighs.
Yeah.
That's massive.
And that's also one of the things that allure me to catfish over any other species is the pure size of them.
Big old monsters.
You hook into a 30 plus pound fish, you got a pretty good fight on your hands. It's just fun.
Yeah. And you're just reeling these like S10 Chevy pickup trucks back into your boat.
Yeah.
I mean, I've literally
Volkswagens,
seen,
you know?
I've literally seen catfishing pictures that were the size of vehicles. Like it's
Mhm.
unbelievable what lives in our waters. No wonder my wife doesn't want to swim in the
It makes me
lakes.
think. I think so. I think I saw an article here within the last week or two. I think a new record blue cat was caught somewhere in the States.
Over 100 pounds.
I think so.
Good.
That's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state record used to be at a Gaston or a car,
Yeah.
and it was a blue cat, and it was caught on the dock by like a 12-year-old with like
Yep.
a Zepco or something.
Yep. Sure was.
Like 100,
So
112 pounds or
a
something.
buddy of mine, well, an acquaintance of mine, he caught 2 state records back to back out of Lake Gaston. Now, the current state record, I wish I could remember the exact weight, but it caught by a good friend of mine, Rocky, and he caught it out of the Roanoke River, blue catfish. Another buddy of mine caught the state record flathead out of the Neuse River. And that's just, everybody goes out there searching for a state record. And when you get a chance to reel something like that in, I mean,
Yeah.
it changes a lot of things. you
Yeah.
know? Even in the catfish world where it's still up and coming, we ain't quite caught up to the crappie and bass fishing side of things, but it's getting there.
Well, it's its own culture.
It is, and that's a whole nother topic we could talk about when it comes to culture and the misconception of what a catfisherman is.
Well, most people think it's a guy with a big beard
Yeah.
sitting on the bank
Yeah.
drinking,
in his overalls,
a dirty 30.
Yeah.
And you know what? When most people just think of fishing in general, that's what they think of.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, those are the bluegill fishermen.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I think fishing is definitely, unlocked a lot of greatness for all of us.
Mhm.
That on the water outdoor therapy is absolutely needed. We talked earlier about like if somebody wanted to get into the fishing, right?
Yep.
So he talked about just getting into catfishing, but that goes for any fishing, right? You just want to get into fishing,
Yep.
go grab a rod, reel, a couple little artificial baits or live baits, and trust me, you're going to catch some fish, right?
You can catch something.
If you're throwing into water where there actually is fish. But the last thing I wanted to ask you before we close the show out, we talk about it with bass guys and gals, like joining local clubs is a great way, certain clubs, to get into the culture and sharing information and learning from those who have a lot of years of experience. Catfishing world, do they have clubs and things like that they offer for?
Yeah,
for
so
anglers?
there's definitely clubs out there. I'm not affiliated with any club, but I've been around a lot. We go by just knowing people and
Right.
tournament trails. Tournament trails are a big thing. We have a local one here, and you get to know everybody that comes and fishes that tournament trail because we fish 12 months out of the year.
Right.
We don't know anything about winterizing a boat. I don't even know what that means.
No.
Still ain't done it to this day.
Nope, not
That thing's on the water 12 months out of the year. But yeah, there are clubs. I haven't affiliated with one. I just haven't felt the need to.
Sure.
I like to go out and talk to everybody.
Yep.
So if I go to any of these tournaments, and I like to travel, a lot.
Yep.
To go fish these tournaments, especially the larger tournaments. So,
Right. Yeah, and you talked about it earlier this year, and we'll close here in just a second. You went to the Dixie Deer Classic, right,
Yep.
with Mossy Oak this year.
Sure did.
We had the Raleigh Fishing Show. The what was the other one? The Green, or where'd you go this year?
Richmond, and
Richmond,
Knoxville.
We got
Okay.
fishing shows that are all over the continental United States, and they're not all about bass fishing. They're about fishing in
Yep.
general, which everybody can fish, and that's the beauty of this recreational hobby or this sport, however you want to categorize it. It doesn't discriminate. Anybody can do it, and that's what we're about here at the OneCast, is like sharing it and providing education information for those. Appreciate you breaking everything down. Want to give you an opportunity one more time before we close the show to plug your socials again, where people can follow you, not only for the catfishing side of it,
Yeah.
but for Mossy Oak Properties.
Yeah, man. Again, I appreciate the invitation to come on here and talk about this, because I know it kind of opens the eyes to a lot of other fishermen. 'Cause sometimes they're just curious,
That's right.
But if you're looking to buy land, farms, rural housing, residential, hit me up. Eric Schwind, Mossy Oak Properties of the Sandhills. That's on Facebook. My email is ESCHWIND@mossyoakproperties.com. Same handle for Instagram. if you're looking for catfishing, it's Chaos Catfishing. Both of those are spelled with a K on Instagram. If you need to get a hold of me for anything, if you want to go fishing, you need to go look at some land. My phone number is 936-494-9686.
Awesome, man. One more thing. You talked about taking a veteran fishing. You know, we're
Yep.
getting ready, folks. May 18th, by the time you're hearing this, it'll be a week out or a couple days before that.
Be the day, 2 days before.
2 days before the Take a Warrior fishing event on Sharon Harris. So if you're not part of that, you know, maybe you can jump in it next year as a boater, or if you're an active duty service member or veteran, you can sign up. We're definitely going to be hosting another event like that next year. I know Heroes Harvest is going to get involved. We're going to try to get some others involved in that. But you talked about taking a veteran fishing for a benefit trip. On the catfishing side, where can veterans find that at?
Yeah, so there is a tournament trail in Virginia. It's man, you put me on the spot with that one. It's a Hopewell. I have to look it up, brother.
Okay. Well, regardless,
but yeah,
anybody
reach out to me.
Yeah, so reach out
to me. The tournament is on the 19th of May. They're gonna show up. Fishing is gonna start at 7. After the fish is done, they're gonna have hot dogs, hamburgers, giving away prizes, whole 9 yards. There's gonna be a slew of boats out there taking veterans out and introducing them to catfishing.
Yep. So I think that's the point here is like, it's not just bass fishing, like it's all the outdoors. To include more, there's a lot of, 501c3 nonprofit organizations that are providing great service to our veteran community. I know we're huge advocates of it. We all served or are serving that are sitting in this room. So if you're a veteran, we always tell you guys this, like, you're not alone, like your fight isn't over. I have to, where's that coin that David gave me? Well, I can't find it. Oh,
there it is.
Here it is. So, David Fuchs, him and his wife drove down from New Jersey. Kilo Foxtrot Golf is keep effing going, right? Your story isn't over. That means a lot. That speaks loudly to our veteran community. Like, you're never alone. You can always hit us up on our social medias. You can hit Mike Johns up at FX3 Inc. He focuses a lot on veteran suicide awareness campaigns. So make sure that you guys understand that we're here for you, and share your story with everybody, because there's somebody that's going to listen to you and will listen to you. Eric, we appreciate you coming on, breaking down the catfishing, talking the Mossy Oak property piece. We appreciate you being a partner of the show, a good friend. We're looking forward to getting you on the water, and thanks for helping us build a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.